The parade was already underway when Commander Ilara Voss felt the first vibration through her boots. She stood at the periscope station of the 10 Ashfall, a Terran excursion Navy deep strike submarine, holding position at a depth of 400 meters beneath the sovereignty of Cathari's grand anchorage. Above her, 12,000 warships moved in ceremonial formation across the orbital shell of Cathari Prime, their engine wash sending harmonic tremors through the ocean of space-time that the Ashfall occupied like a splinter lodged beneath the skin of the universe. The Ashfall was not supposed to be here. No human vessel was supposed to be within 900 light-years of Cathari space. The Sovereignty's border interdiction grid was the densest in the galactic arm, 14,000 sensor platforms, 6,200 patrol frigates, and a network of graviton tripwires that could detect a mass signature as small as 3 tons at distances exceeding 2 light towers. The interdiction grid had been the Sovereignty's pride for 3 centuries. It had stopped every incursion, every probe, every smuggler, every spy drone that had ever tested it. The Ashfall displaced 41,000 tons. It had crossed the grid 9 days ago without tripping a single wire. Voss checked her displays. The parade formation above was a hemisphere of warships arranged in concentric rings around the Sovereignty's newest dreadnought, the Unbreakable Doctrine, a 4-kilometer monument to Cathari naval engineering that Supreme Navarch Torvan Keth was about to commission into active service. The commissioning ceremony was the largest military event the Sovereignty had held in a generation. Every flag officer in the Cathari fleet was present. Every capital ship that could be spared from border duty had been recalled. 12,000 warships, their hulls polished to mirror finish, their formation geometry calculated to the meter, their communications channels alive with ceremonial chatter. Below them, invisible to every sensor in their fleet, sat a human submarine that was 211 meters long, painted in radar-absorbent black, and carrying enough ordnance to gut a continent. Voss did not think about the ordnance, she thought about the mission. Depth holding steady at 400, Lieutenant Commander Haruki Tanaka reported from the navigation console. His voice was barely above a whisper. Aboard the Ashfall, nobody spoke above a whisper during silent running. It was not a regulation. It was instinct, the inherited reflex of submarine crews stretching back centuries on Earth, when sound could kill you. In space, sound did not propagate through vacuum, but the Ashfall operated in a medium that was not vacuum. The Terran excursion Navy's deep strike submarines moved through subspace, a compressed dimensional layer beneath normal space-time that the Cathari did not know existed. In subspace, vibration mattered. Harmonics mattered. A dropped wrench could produce a resonance spike that a sufficiently sensitive gravimetric array might detect as an anomaly. The Cathari did not have sufficiently sensitive gravimetric arrays. The Ashfall's intelligence package confirmed that with 97% confidence. But Voss's crew whispered anyway, because submarine captains did not survive by trusting 97%. Communications, status on the intercept feed, Voss said. Lieutenant Yuki Odora adjusted her headset. Feeding clean, Commander. I'm pulling their ceremonial broadcast, their fleet coordination channel, and she paused, her fingers moving across her console. Their flag officer encrypted channel. The cipher rotation just shifted, but we're tracking it. Decryption lag is about 40 seconds. 40 seconds. The Ashfall's cryptographic suite was breaking the Sovereignty's highest classification military encryption in real time, 40 seconds behind the live conversation. Voss filed this fact the way she filed everything, precisely, without pride, without satisfaction. These were capabilities. They existed to be used. She would use them, document the results, and bring the Ashfall home. That was the mission. The mission was not to attack. The mission was never to attack. The Ashfall was a reconnaissance platform. The most advanced, most expensive, most classified vessel in the Terran excursion Navy's inventory, and its purpose was to go where no human ship should be able to go, listen to everything, record everything, and leave without anyone knowing it had been there. In 14 months of deployment, the Ashfall had penetrated the sovereign space of 6 galactic powers. It had mapped the interior defense architectures of 3 of them. It had recorded over 11,000 hours of encrypted military communications, 900 hours of which had been decrypted and analyzed in real time. It had surveyed 41 naval installations, 17 shipyards, and 9 weapons testing ranges. It had never fired a weapon. It had never been detected. Voss intended to maintain that record. "Periscope feed coming through now," said Petty Officer Second Class Davy Santos from the sensor station. Santos was young 23 on his second deployment, but he had the steadiest hands on the boat when it came to the passive sensor suite. "Switching to the hull-mounted array. I'm getting good resolution on the formation above us." The main display lit with a composite image assembled from the Ashfall's passive sensors, gravitometric, thermal, electromagnetic, and quantum state detection systems that listened without broadcasting, absorbing the ambient emissions of 12,000 warships the way a microphone absorbs sound. The image showed the parade formation in false color: blue for mass signatures, orange for thermal output, green for electromagnetic emissions. The hemisphere of warships glowed like a decorative bowl filled with 12,000 colored beads. At its center, the unbreakable doctrine blazed white-hot on the thermal display. The Dreadnought's reactors were running at full ceremonial output, a wasteful display of power that served no tactical purpose but looked impressive on the Sovereignty's broadcast feeds. Voss could see the heat plume extending behind the Dreadnought like a comet's tail. "Santos, give me the Doctrine's weapons loadout," Voss said. "Passives are reading 844 energy weapon emplacements, Commander. 212 torpedo tubes, ventral and dorsal, 16 fighter bays, each carrying approximately 30 strike craft, shield generator output consistent with a Class 9 defensive suite." Santos paused. "She's a big one, Commander. 4.1 kilometers stem to stern." Voss nodded. The unbreakable doctrine was roughly 20 times the Ashfall's length and approximately 900 times its mass. It carried enough weapons to sterilize a mid-sized moon. Its shields could absorb the combined output of an entire Terran cruiser squadron for approximately 40 minutes. It was, by any conventional metric, an overwhelming force compared to the small black submarine lurking beneath it. Voss did not think in conventional metrics. "Log the loadout. Cross-reference with the intelligence estimate from naval operations. Note any discrepancies." She turned to Tanaka. "How long until the commissioning ceremony begins?" 37 minutes, based on the ceremonial broadcast schedule we intercepted. "And the formation will hold static during the ceremony." "That's the protocol, Commander. All 12,000 ships hold position for the duration of the Navarch's address. No maneuvering, no engine adjustments. Full ceremonial stillness." Full ceremonial stillness. 12,000 warships, including every flag officer and every capital ship the Sovereignty possessed, holding perfectly still for the duration of a speech. Voss absorbed this information the way she absorbed everything clinically, completely, filing it under operational parameters. "That's our window," she said. "During the address I want full passive scans on every capital ship in the formation. Engine signatures, shield harmonics, weapons charging profiles. Santos, you'll rotate through sectors. Tanaka, you'll log navigational data, formation distances, approach vectors, gap analysis. Odora, you'll keep the intercept feed running and flag any communications that reference detection anomalies, sensor ghosts, or unidentified contacts." The crew acknowledged in whispers. The Ashfall hummed with the quiet efficiency of a machine built by people who understood that perfection was not a goal but a baseline. Voss moved to the tactical console and called up the mission timeline. The Ashfall had been inside Kethari space for 9 days. In those 9 days, It had mapped 7 naval installations from distances that would have given a Cathari admiral a cardiac event. It had recorded the complete defensive architecture of the sovereignty's inner perimeter, sensor placement, patrol routes, response times, blind spots. It had catalogued the sovereignty's entire reserve fleet at anchor in the Varath yards, 431 warships in various states of maintenance, including their individual readiness assessments, pulled directly from the yard's own maintenance logs via a passive intercept of their ground-based communications network. The maintenance logs had been enlightening. 41% of the reserve fleet had reactor issues that would require 6 to 8 weeks to resolve. 23% had weapon systems flagged for recalibration. 12% were listed as structurally compromised and pending hull work. The sovereignty's reserve fleet, the force that would reinforce the active fleet in a crisis, was less than a quarter operational. Voss had recorded all of it. She had not transmitted any of it. The Ashfall did not transmit during operational deployments. Transmissions could be detected. The data sat in the Ashfall's hardened storage cores, waiting for the long journey home, where it would be delivered to the Terran Excursion Navy's Intelligence Directorate in person, by hand, the way submarine captains had delivered intelligence since before humanity left Earth. The parade was the final objective. The commissioning of the unbreakable doctrine had drawn the entire Cathari fleet to one location, and Voss intended to catalog every ship, every signature, and every vulnerability while they sat still and posed for their own cameras. She checked the clock, 31 minutes to the ceremony. "Commander," Odera's voice had changed. The professional calm was still there, but underneath it sat something tighter. "I'm pulling something from the flag officer channel. The decryption lag is it just caught up. Navark Keth is speaking." "Put it through." The voice that filled the Ashfall's command center was translated in real time by the boat's linguistic AI. But the cadence of the original Cathari came through beneath the English overlay, a deep, resonant voice accustomed to command. "The commissioning of the unbreakable doctrine marks more than a new warship entering service. It marks the final closure of a vulnerability that this sovereignty has tolerated for too long. 3 years ago, our intelligence services confirmed what many of us suspected, that the species known as humans possess a naval capability that our archives failed to account for. The scope of that capability remains classified at the highest level, but I will say this much to the officers assembled here today. The doctrine was built as an answer." Voss's expression did not change. She listened. "An answer to a threat that does not announce itself. That does not declare war. That does not send ambassadors or file territorial claims or participate in the protocols that govern civilized powers. The humans operate in the margins, in the gaps, in the spaces between what our sensors can detect and what our doctrine accounts for. They are, in the frank assessment of our intelligence services, the most dangerous adversary this sovereignty has never formally engaged." Odera glanced at Voss. Voss held up one hand. "Keep recording. The unbreakable doctrine carries weapons designed specifically to address the human threat. Its detection suite includes next-generation gravimetric sensors developed by our Applied Sciences Division, sensors capable of detecting mass anomalies at ranges and resolutions that exceed anything in our current fleet. The doctrine's mission, once commissioned, will be to patrol the border approaches and find what our existing sensors cannot find." Voss's hand dropped slowly to the tactical console. She did not touch any controls. She simply rested her fingers on the edge of the display, the way a surgeon rests a hand on the operating table before the first incision. "Next-generation gravimetric sensors," she repeated, her voice barely audible. "Santos, is the doctrine's detection suite active?" "Negative, Commander. The doctrine is running ceremonial systems only. Her active sensors are powered down for the parade. When the ceremony ends and the doctrine enters active service, how long before those sensors come online? Santos consulted his data. Standard Cathari commissioning protocol calls for a system-by-system activation over the first 72 hours. Detection suite would come online in the first 12 hours. In 12 hours, the Sovereignty would possess a sensor platform that might be able to detect a subspace anomaly consistent with a deep strike submarine's passage. Voss did not know if the next generation sensors could actually find the ashfall. No intelligence estimate could answer that question with certainty. The only way to know was to test it, and testing it meant risking detection, and risking detection meant risking the most classified vessel in the Terran fleet. The Navarch's voice continued. I have authorized the Doctrine's first operational patrol to commence within 24 hours of commissioning. The patrol route will cover the 7 most likely approach corridors into Sovereignty space. If the humans have penetrated our borders, if they are here, now, listening, the Doctrine will find them. Voss looked at the main display. The unbreakable Doctrine sat at the center of 12,000 warships, 4.1 kilometers of the Sovereignty's best engineering, built specifically to find vessels like the one that was currently sitting 400 meters beneath it. The irony was precise enough to cut glass. She had been sent to observe a fleet parade and catalog warship signatures. She had found something more valuable and more dangerous, evidence that the Sovereignty was developing counter-submarine capability. That intelligence had to reach home. It had to reach home before the Doctrine's sensors came online and potentially compromised every future penetration mission into Cathari space. Tanaka, Voss said, plot an extraction course. We leave after the ceremony, not before. Tanaka looked up. Commander, if the Doctrine's sensors come online in 12 hours, then we have 12 hours to clear the border. The extraction course should account for that, but we are not leaving before the ceremony. She turned back to the periscope display. We came here to catalog this fleet, and we will catalog this fleet. Every ship, every signature, every weapon. The ceremony gives us 30 minutes of perfect stillness, and I will not waste 30 minutes of perfect stillness because the mission got more complicated. This was the thing about Voss that her crew understood in their bones but could never quite articulate to outsiders. She did not panic. She did not rush. When the situation changed, she recalculated, adjusted, and continued executing with the same meticulous precision she had brought to the original plan. The discovery that the Sovereignty was building a submarine hunter did not make her afraid. It made her more thorough. If this was the last time a Terran submarine could operate freely inside Cathari space, then this survey would be the most complete intelligence package ever assembled on a hostile fleet, because it might have to last. The ceremony began on schedule. Supreme Navarch Torvan Keth's voice rolled across the Sovereignty's broadcast channels, and 12,000 warships held their positions in ceremonial stillness, while their Supreme Commander spoke about strength, vigilance, and the sacred duty of the Cathari fleet to protect the Sovereignty's borders from threats seen and unseen. Below them, the ashfall worked. Santos rotated through sectors with mechanical precision, pulling passive sensor data from every capital ship in the formation. Engine signatures cataloged, shield harmonics recorded, weapons charging profiles mapped. Each ship's electronic emissions captured in their entirety, the electromagnetic fingerprint that would allow Terran intelligence to identify that specific vessel anywhere in the galaxy for the rest of its operational life. Tanaka logged formation data, the precise distances between ships, the approach vectors, the gaps in the defensive screen. In a conventional fleet, formation data was mildly useful. In a fleet holding ceremonial stillness, it was a gift. Every ship's exact position, velocity 0, sensors in passive mode. The ashfall was mapping the Sovereignty's fleet the way a cartographer maps a sleeping city street by street, building by building, with the patience of someone who knows the city will not move. Odora kept the intercept feed running, pulling communications from every channel the ashfall could access. flag officer discussions about readiness reports, engineering conversations about the doctrine's new sensor suite, casual traffic between junior officers complaining about the length of the Navarch's speech, all of it recorded, all of it stored. Voss supervised from the command chair, her eyes moving between displays with the controlled attention of someone who had done this many times, and understood that the greatest risk during a surveillance operation was not detection, it was missing something. She did not miss things. 14 minutes into the ceremony, Odora flagged a communication. Commander, the flag officer channel. Navarch Keth is referencing specific intelligence about human submarine operations. Voss leaned forward, play it. Our analysts have studied the pattern of anomalous readings reported by border stations over the past 18 months. The conclusion is clear. These were not sensor artifacts. They were transits. Human submarines have been crossing our border, operating inside our space, and withdrawing without detection. The frequency of these transits has increased. In the past 6 months alone, we have identified probable transit signatures on 14 separate occasions. 14. Voss filed the number. The actual number was 19, 5 additional transits that the sovereignty's analysts had either missed or attributed to natural phenomena. The ashfall itself accounted for 3 of the 14 they had identified, plus 2 of the 5 they had missed. The unbreakable doctrine was built to end this. Its gravimetric detection suite can identify a subspace transit disturbance at ranges up to 0.7 light hours. It can distinguish between natural subspace fluctuations and artificial ones with 92% accuracy. It can track a subspace contact in real time and vector interceptors to the point of emergence. 0.7 light hours, 92% accuracy, real-time tracking. Voss committed each figure to memory. These were the specifications of the weapon designed to kill her and every submarine captain in the Terran fleet. She recorded them with the same clinical detachment she applied to everything else. When the doctrine enters service, we will no longer be blind. We will see them, and when we see them, we will have options that we currently do not have. The address continued, but Voss had heard what she needed. She turned to her executive officer, Lieutenant Commander Ren Vasquez, who stood at the damage control station with the careful stillness of a man who understood that his captain was processing something significant. "Ren," Voss said quietly, "when we get home, the Intelligence Directorate is going to want a tactical assessment of the doctrine's counter-submarine capability. I want you to start drafting it now. Include everything we've recorded, the sensor specifications, the detection ranges, the accuracy figures. Cross-reference with our own subspace signature profiles. I want to know if the doctrine can actually find us, or if Navarch Keth is selling confidence to his flag officers." Vasquez nodded, "And if it can find us, Commander, then we adapt. That's what submarines do." The ceremony lasted 41 minutes. In those 41 minutes, the ashfall cataloged 4,712 individual warships at resolution levels that would take Kethari intelligence analysts years to match. It recorded the complete electronic signature of every capital ship in the formation. It mapped the formation geometry with centimeter precision. It intercepted and decrypted over 300 discrete communications across 8 channels, including 11 conversations between flag officers that contained classified operational details about the sovereignty's strategic posture, force readiness, and threat assessments. 11 conversations, 11 windows into how the sovereignty's leadership thought about war, about humans, about the galaxy's balance of power. Each one a puzzle piece that, when assembled with the 11,000 hours of previous intercepts, would give the Terran excursion navy a more complete picture of Kethari strategic thinking than the Kethari themselves possessed, because the Kethari could only hear what their own people told them, and people told their superiors what they wanted to hear. The ashfall heard what they told each other when they thought no one was listening. The ceremony ended. The formation began to dissolve, 12,000 warships breaking from their static positions and maneuvering to their assigned patrol routes and anchorages. The orderly hemisphere of colored beads on the ashfall's display scattered like a broken necklace. Extraction course plotted, Tanaka reported. Best route takes us through the Vareth corridor to the outer perimeter, then through the border interdiction grid via the Gap 7 blind spot we identified on the way in. Total transit time to safe space, 9 hours, 40 minutes at current speed. 9 hours, 40 minutes. The doctrine's sensors would come online in 12 hours, a margin of 2 hours and 20 minutes. Voss considered the margin. It was enough. It was not comfortable, but submarine operations were not designed to be comfortable. They were designed to work. One adjustment, she said. Before we begin extraction, I want a close approach on the doctrine. The command center went quiet. Not silent, the ashfall was always quiet, but the particular quality of silence that occurs when experienced professionals realize their commander has just said something unexpected. Tanaka turned. Commander, the Doctrine is the one ship in this fleet that was specifically built to detect us. The Doctrine's active sensors are powered down. They will remain powered down until the commissioning activation sequence begins, which will not happen for at least 12 hours. Right now, the Doctrine is running on the same sensor suite as every other Cathari warship, the suite that has failed to detect us for 9 days. But a close approach will give us passive sensor data on the Doctrine's hull composition, internal compartment layout, and reactor architecture that we cannot obtain from 400 meters away. Specifically, it will give us the data we need to determine whether the Doctrine's gravimetric sensors are integrated into the hull structure or mounted in discrete arrays. That distinction matters. If they are integrated, countering them requires a fundamental change to our subspace signature management. If they are mounted in discrete arrays, they can be jammed, spoofed, or destroyed. She let the logic settle. It was clean. It was precise. It was also dangerous, and everyone in the command center knew it. Santos, how close can you get useful hull composition data from passive sensors? Santos calculated. 50 meters, Commander, maybe 60 for the reactor architecture. 50 meters. The ashfall would pass within 50 meters of a 4-kilometer dreadnought that had been built to kill it. The dreadnought's crew would be celebrating the commissioning. They would be running ceremonial systems. They would not be looking for a submarine 50 meters from their hull, because no submarine in the galaxy had ever been 50 meters from a hostile dreadnought's hull, because no submarine in the galaxy could do what the ashfall could do. Do it, Voss said. Bring us up to 100 meters first. Slow approach, 0 emissions. If anything changes on their sensor status, anything at all, we break off and begin extraction immediately. The ashfall rose through subspace like a predator ascending from the deep. The main display showed the unbreakable Doctrine growing on the passive sensors, first as a mass signature, then as a thermal outline, then as a resolved shape. 4.1 kilometers of angular Cathari engineering, its hull still gleaming with parade polish, its running lights cycling through the Sovereignty's ceremonial colors. The dreadnought's crew numbered 42,000. 42,000 Cathari officers and specialists, celebrating the commissioning of their species' most advanced warship, unaware that a human submarine was rising toward them through a dimension they did not know existed. 100 meters, the ashfall held. Passive scans running, Santos whispered. Hull composition resolving now. I'm reading layered composite armor, titanium carbide outer shell, energy dispersal mesh underneath, then what looks like a crystalline matrix I haven't seen before. That might be the gravimetric sensor integration layer. Can you confirm integration versus discrete arrays at this range? Not yet, Commander. I need to get closer to the ventral hull section. The sensor clusters should be concentrated there if they're discrete arrays. Voss checked the tactical display. The Doctrine's active sensors were still powered down. Its passive detection suite was running at standard, the same suite that had failed to see the ashfall for 9 days. Take us to 50 meters, ventral approach. The ashfall crept forward. The crew breathed in shallow, measured cycles, not because the Cathari could hear them, but because the body follows the mind, and the mind was telling them that they were 50 meters from something that could kill them with a single broadside. 42,000 Cathari overhead, 211 meters of human submarine below, 50 meters of nothing in between. "I have it," Santos said. "Commander, the gravimetric sensors are discrete arrays. I'm counting 16 primary arrays along the ventral hull, 8 along each lateral. They're mounted in external housings, armored but external, not integrated into the hull structure." External housings, armored but external. Voss felt something settle in her chest, not relief, because she did not permit herself relief during operations, but the cold satisfaction of a professional who has obtained the answer she came for. External arrays could be jammed. External arrays could be spoofed. External arrays could, if it came to it, be destroyed by a torpedo that knew exactly where they were, fired from a submarine that had mapped their positions to the centimeter. "Full scan, Santos, every array, every housing. Exact positions, exact dimensions. I want a targeting package that an ensign could execute." Santos worked. The data flowed. 16 ventral arrays, 8 per lateral, 40 arrays total, each one 3.7 meters across, each one housed in an armored blister that protruded 12 centimeters from the hull surface. The ashfall sensors recorded their positions with the precision of a jeweler measuring a setting. Above them, the unbreakable Doctrine hummed with the content vibration of a newly commissioned warship. Its crew celebrated. Its navarch received congratulations from Allied powers. Its weapons sat in their mounts, polished and gleaming, and pointed at threats that were hypothetical, distant, abstract. The threat was not hypothetical. The threat was 50 meters below the Doctrine's keel, counting its teeth. "Scan complete," Santos reported. "Helm, begin extraction. Tanaka, take us to the Varath corridor. Standard depth, standard speed, no rush." No rush. The words were deliberate. Voss did not rush because rushing created noise, and noise created risk, and the ashfall's survival and the survival of the intelligence it carried depended on the absolute elimination of unnecessary risk. They had 9 hours and 40 minutes to clear the border. They had a margin. They would use the margin at a pace that preserved every advantage the ashfall possessed. The submarine descended back to 400 meters and began its long, silent transit toward the border. For the first hour, nothing happened. The ashfall moved through subspace at 12 knots, its maximum quiet speed, the speed at which its subspace drive produced the minimum possible disturbance. Above them, the Cathari fleet dispersed to its normal posture. Patrol groups formed. Screening squadrons deployed. The post-ceremony reorganization created a temporary increase in sensor activity as ships tested their systems and re-established communication links. The ashfall passed through the reorganizing fleet like a thought through a crowded room. Ships moved above it, beside it, behind it. Patrol frigates crossed its path at distances that would have been terrifying if Voss had allowed herself to be terrified. She did not. She monitored, assessed, adjusted, and continued. The second hour brought them to the Varath corridor, a natural channel in the subspace topology that the ashfall had used on its inbound transit. The corridor offered lower subspace density, which meant lower transit disturbance, which meant lower detectability. It also passed directly between two of the sovereignty's largest naval installations, the Varath Yards and the Keth Orbital Fortress, which meant higher ambient electromagnetic noise to mask the ashfall's already minimal signature. They were threading a needle between two fortresses, using the fortress's own noise as camouflage. It was the kind of maneuver that submarine tactical manuals described in theoretical terms and submarine captains executed in practice, because theory was what people wrote when they had never done the thing. "Commander," Odor's voice again, tight beneath the professional calm. "I'm picking up a new communication on the doctrine's dedicated channel. It's encrypted, but the pattern matches a system activation order." Voss's fingers found the tactical console. Time stamp. "Transmitting now, Commander. Real time." The commissioning activation sequence was supposed to begin in 12 hours. "Yes, Commander. This appears to be an accelerated order. I can't read the content, yet the encryption is heavier than the standard flag officer cipher. Decryption will take 4 to 6 minutes." 4 to 6 minutes. Voss looked at the navigation display. They were in the Verath corridor, 5 hours and 20 minutes from the border. "Santos, can you detect any change in the doctrine's sensor emissions?" Santos scanned. The seconds stretched like wire. "Negative so far, Commander. The doctrine is still running standard passives. No active sensor emissions detected." Voss waited. The 4 minutes felt like 40. "Decryption coming through now," Odor said. "It's an order from the Navarch's flagstaff to the doctrine's commanding officer. Subject line: immediate activation of gravimetric detection suite. Reason given: the Navarch wants a demonstration of the suite's capability for the Allied observers who are still aboard. A show of force. He wants to sweep the parade area and confirm it's clean." A demonstration. A show of force. The Navarch wanted to impress his guests by activating the submarine hunting sensors and showing them that nothing was there. The timing was wrong. The ashfall was still inside the perimeter. "Time until activation?" Voss asked. Odora read further. "The order specifies activation within 90 minutes. Full power sweep of the Grand Anchorage and surrounding space to a range of 0.7 light hours." 90 minutes. The ashfall was 5 hours and 20 minutes from the border. 0.7 light hours was the detection range the Navarch had quoted in his speech. The Grand Anchorage was behind them, but a 0.7 light hour sweep would extend well into the Verath corridor. They were inside the detection envelope. Voss did not panic. She did not raise her voice. She sat in the command chair of her submarine, surrounded by her crew, and she thought. The thought lasted 11 seconds. "Tanaka, revised calculation. If the doctrine activates its gravimetric suite in 90 minutes and sweeps to 0.7 light hours, how far along the Verath corridor will we be?" Tanaka's fingers flew. "At current speed, we'll be approximately 2.3 light hours from the Grand Anchorage, well within detection range." "At maximum sprint speed?" "Maximum sprint produces a significantly larger subspace disturbance. At sprint, we could reach 3.1 light hours in 90 minutes, still within range, and the larger disturbance would make us easier to detect, not harder." There it was. The mathematics laid bare. They could not outrun the detection envelope. They could not reduce their signature below the doctrine's stated 92% detection threshold. They could not go deeper. The ashfall was already at its maximum operational depth in subspace. They could not surface into normal space without appearing on every conventional sensor in the Sovereignty's fleet. Every option was a variation of being found. Voss looked at the display. The Verath corridor stretched ahead of them, a narrow channel of favorable subspace topology between two fortress installations. Behind them, the unbreakable doctrine was preparing to activate the most advanced detection system ever built against human submarines. In 90 minutes, that system would sweep the corridor with enough sensitivity to detect a 41,000-ton submarine at ranges that made evasion impossible. She thought about the intelligence in the ashfall storage cores. 9 days of surveillance, 41 installations mapped, 11,000 hours of communications intercepted, the complete electronic signatures of 4,712 warships, the targeting package for the doctrine's gravimetric arrays, the reserve fleet readiness data showing 41% of the sovereignty's backup forces were non-operational. This intelligence had to reach home. It was not optional. It was not negotiable. The Terran excursion navy needed this data, and the data existed only aboard the Ashfall, and the Ashfall was about to be detected. "All hands," Voss said. Her voice was quiet, steady, and carried the particular weight of a commander who has made a decision. "Rig for ultra-quiet. All non-essential systems to standby. Reduce power output to minimum sustainable levels. I want this boat running on life support, passive sensors, and nothing else." The command center dimmed as systems powered down. The hum of the environmental systems dropped to a whisper. The displays dimmed to their lowest settings. The Ashfall, already quiet, became something closer to silence made physical. "Tanaka, plot a new course. Take us into the Keth Fortress shadow." Tanaka stared. "Commander, the Keth Fortress shadow puts us within 600 meters of a Kethari military installation. Their patrol boats. Their patrol boats use conventional sensors. Conventional sensors have not detected us in 9 days. The doctrine's gravimetric suite is the threat. The Keth Fortress generates the largest gravimetric footprint within 2 light towers, its mass, its reactors, its weapon systems, the orbital infrastructure around it. If we position the Ashfall within the fortress's gravimetric shadow, the doctrine's sensors will have to distinguish our signature from the fortress's background noise." She pulled up the data they had collected on the fortress during their inbound transit. The Keth Fortress masses approximately 4.7 billion tons. Its gravimetric signature in subspace generates ambient disturbances across a radius of approximately 900 meters. If we hold position inside that radius, our 41,000 tons will be lost in the noise. It was the submarine captain's oldest trick, translated into a medium that submarines had not existed in until the Terran excursion navy invented it. Hide under the loudest thing in the ocean. 600 meters from the fortress, Tanaka said, in a channel between their patrol routes, on minimum power for how long? Until the sweep passes. The Navarch ordered a demonstration, a single sweep to impress his guests. A demonstration sweep runs once, confirms the area is clean, and ends. We wait for it to pass, then resume extraction. Tanaka nodded slowly. He did not like it. No one in the command center liked it. But they understood the logic, and they understood their captain, and they understood that Commander Ilara Voss had brought them through 6 penetration missions by doing exactly this, by being colder, more precise, and more patient than anyone who was trying to find them. The Ashfall changed course. It took 41 minutes to reach the Keth Fortress shadow. The fortress loomed on the passive sensors like a mountain, a vast orbital installation bristling with weapons platforms, docking bays, and sensor arrays, surrounded by a constellation of patrol boats, supply tenders, and maintenance craft. The gravitational and electromagnetic noise it generated was enormous, a thunderstorm of ambient energy that blanketed the surrounding subspace in disturbance. The Ashfall slid into the shadow like a fish into the roots of a sunken tree. 612 meters from the fortress's outer hull, close enough that the crew could resolve individual hull plates on the passive sensors, close enough that a patrol boat passing overhead would block out the stars if they had been in normal space, close enough that Voss could hear, or imagined she could hear, the deep, tectonic vibration of the fortress's reactor core bleeding through subspace like a heartbeat. "Position holding," Tanaka whispered. "All systems at minimum. We are running quiet." Voss checked the clock. 49 minutes until the doctrine's gravimetric suite activated. The crew waited. The Ashfall waited. The minutes counted down like drops into a still pool. At 37 minutes, a patrol boat passed. Its mass signature crossed the passive sensors at a range of 400 meters, close enough that the Ashfall's hull-mounted array could resolve the individual thruster nozzles on its ventral surface. The patrol boat was a Cathari Sentinel-class corvette, 80 meters long, crew of 40, armed with light energy weapons and a standard sensor suite. It moved along its assigned route at a leisurely patrol speed, broadcasting automated identification pings on the Sovereignty's military frequency. Its active sensors swept the space around it in routine arcs. The sweep passed over the Ashfall's position. It registered nothing. The Sentinel's sensors were designed to detect objects in normal space. The Ashfall existed in subspace. The patrol boat might as well have been looking for a fish by scanning the sky. But the patrol boat's mass added a temporary variable to the fortress's gravimetric signature. Voss noted it, calculated the perturbation, and filed it. If another patrol boat passed during the doctrine's sweep, its mass signature would alter the background noise the doctrine's sensors were trying to filter. That alteration could work for or against the Ashfall, depending on timing. At 23 minutes, Santos flagged a second concern. "Commander, the fortress is cycling its reactor. Output is increasing, looks like a scheduled power adjustment. The gravimetric disturbance in our shadow zone is going to shift. Direction. The reactor cycle will intensify the disturbance for approximately 4 minutes, then settle. During those 4 minutes, our cover improves, more noise, harder to distinguish us. After the cycle settles, the background will be slightly cleaner than it was before, marginally worse for us." Voss calculated. If the doctrine sweep hit the fortress shadow during the reactor cycle, the Ashfall would be buried in noise. If it hit after the cycle settled, the detection threshold would drop by a fraction of a percent. A fraction that might not matter. A fraction that might matter enormously. When does the reactor cycle peak? 12 minutes from now. And the doctrine sweep? Estimated activation in 23 minutes. If the sweep propagates at light speed, it reaches our position approximately 9 seconds after activation. 23 minutes to activation. 12 minutes to reactor peak. The reactor cycle would peak 11 minutes before the sweep arrived. The peak would last 4 minutes. The sweep would arrive 7 minutes after the peak ended, during the settling phase. The mathematics were not in their favor. Voss made a decision. "Tanaka, adjust our position. Move us 300 meters closer to the fortress's reactor section." "That puts us at 312 meters from the hull, Commander." "I am aware. The reactor cycle will generate maximum gravimetric noise at its source. If we are closer to the source when the sweep arrives, we are deeper in the noise. 300 meters gives us the best cover during the settling phase." Tanaka adjusted the helm. The Ashfall crept forward through subspace, closing the distance to the fortress with the careful pace of something that understood the consequences of haste. 312 meters. The fortress's hull filled the passive sensor display. Individual access ports were visible. Maintenance drones moved along the surface in programmed patterns, servicing antenna arrays and replacing sensor modules. One of the maintenance drones passed within 90 meters of the Ashfall's position. It did not react. It was looking for loose hull plates, not for submarines in a dimension it did not know existed. Voss used the waiting time the way she used all time productively. She reviewed the data they had collected on the doctrine's sensor arrays. 16 ventral, 8 per lateral, 40 total, external housings, 3.7 meters across, 12 centimeters of armored blister. She drafted the targeting package in her head. 40 arrays, 40 targets. The Ashfall carried 24 torpedo tubes and 60 warheads, more than enough with rounds to spare. If it ever came to a shooting war, a Terran submarine could blind the doctrine before it knew it was under attack. The irony was precise. The weapon built to find submarines had been surveyed by a submarine at 50 meters, and the submarine had already mapped the exact location of every sensor that could threaten it. But that was not the mission. The mission was to bring the intelligence home. The torpedo calculations were filed under contingency, the cold, professional preparation of a captain who planned for everything, hoped for nothing, and executed whatever the situation demanded. The clock reached 0. "Commander," Santos said, "the doctrine's emissions just changed. I'm reading a new energy signature broadband gravimetric. It's the detection suite." On the passive sensors, a wave of energy expanded outward from the unbreakable doctrine's position like a ripple in a pond. The gravimetric sweep was visible as a shifting pattern of subspace disturbance, a pulse that moved outward in all directions at the speed of light, sampling the subspace topology for anomalies. The wave reached the Varath corridor. It swept through the channel where the ashfall had been 41 minutes ago. It found nothing, because there was nothing there to find. The wave continued outward. It reached the edges of the Keth fortress's gravimetric shadow. The ashfall sat in the shadow and did not breathe. "The sweep is passing over the fortress's disturbance field," Santos whispered. His hands were flat on his console, motionless. "The doctrine's sensors are reading the fortress's background noise. I can see them processing there, attempting to filter the fortress's signature and identify discrete contacts within the shadow." Voss watched the display. The sweep lingered on the fortress's shadow for 17 seconds, an eternity in submarine time, a moment in which 41,000 tons of human submarine sat inside 4.7 billion tons of Kethari fortress noise and dared the most advanced sensors in the galaxy to tell the difference. The sweep moved on. Santos exhaled. It was the loudest sound anyone had made aboard the ashfall in 2 hours. "The sweep has passed, Commander. No change in the doctrine's posture. No alert signals on any channel. No patrol boats vectoring toward our position." Odera confirmed. "The flag officer channel is carrying the Navarch's commentary to his guests. He is saying," she listened. Her lips twitched in something that was not quite a smile. "He is saying that the sweep confirms the grand anchorage and surrounding space is clean. No anomalous contacts detected. He is calling it proof that the sovereignty's borders are secure." The sovereignty's borders were secure. The grand anchorage was clean. No anomalous contacts. 400 meters below the parade and 600 meters from the fortress, the most dangerous submarine in the galaxy sat in silence and let the most advanced sensors in the galaxy announce that she did not exist. Voss waited 10 more minutes, 15, 20. She waited until the sweep had completed its full rotation, until the doctrine's gravimetric suite powered down to standby, until the flag officer channel confirmed that the demonstration was over and the Allied observers were being escorted to their diplomatic vessels. Then she spoke. "Tanaka, resume extraction course. Standard speed, take us home." The ashfall moved out of the fortress's shadow, back into the Varath corridor, and resumed its long, silent transit toward the border. The extraction was not uneventful. 3 hours into the transit, a Kethari heavy cruiser squadron, 6 ships, on a routine patrol rotation, crossed the corridor at an oblique angle. The squadron's active sensors were running at full power, sweeping for the conventional threats that the sovereignty's patrols were designed to find: smugglers, insurgent scouts, unauthorized merchant traffic. The sensor beams passed through the ashfall's subspace position without registering a contact. The cruisers moved on. But the squadron's passage forced Tanaka to adjust course. One of the cruisers had settled into a patrol station directly along the ashfall's planned extraction route, its engines idling at a holding velocity that put it squarely across the Gap 7 approach. The blind spot in the border interdiction grid, the precise gap the ashfall had used on its inbound transit, was now partially covered by a heavy cruiser with active sensors sweeping at 30-second intervals. Alternate route, Voss asked. Tanaka pulled up the border analysis. Gap 12, wider but farther, adds 2 hours and 40 minutes to our extraction time. 2 hours and 40 minutes. That would put them outside Cathari space approximately 11 hours and 56 minutes after leaving the Grand Anchorage. The doctrine's 12-hour commissioning activation window was based on standard protocol. The accelerated demonstration sweep had already proved that the Navark did not always follow standard protocol. Voss weighed the options. Gap 7 with a heavy cruiser blocking the approach, or Gap 12 with a longer transit time that ate nearly all of their safety margin. Gap 12, she said. The extra time is a cost. A detected transit is a catastrophe. We pay the cost. The Ashfall adjusted course. It moved through the Sovereignty's inner space with the discipline of a vessel that had been doing this for 14 months, slow, quiet, patient, invisible. It passed within 800 meters of a Cathari supply depot and recorded the depot's inventory manifest from its commercial broadcast. It skirted a training exercise involving 40 escort corvettes and logged their formation protocols. It crossed the path of a Cathari intelligence vessel, a signals collection ship, ironically, and recorded the intelligence vessel's own sensor emissions, which would tell Terran analysts exactly what the Sovereignty's intelligence services were looking for and what they could detect. Even during extraction, the Ashfall gathered intelligence. The submarine's purpose was to know, and it knew everything it touched. Gap 12 was wider than Gap 7, a natural feature in the border interdiction grid, where two sensor platforms had overlapping coverage areas that created a processing blind spot. The overlap meant that both platforms detected objects in the gap, but each assumed the other was tracking them, and neither flagged the contact for a patrol response. The Ashfall slipped through the gap at minimum speed, its subspace signature indistinguishable from the background fluctuations that both platforms attributed to stellar winds. It emerged into unclaimed space 11 hours and 53 minutes after leaving the Grand Anchorage, 3 minutes inside the margin. Voss noted the margin. She did not comment on it. 3 minutes or 3 hours, the result was the same. They were out. The intelligence was intact. The mission continued. The transit home took 11 days. 11 days of silent running through unclaimed space, then through the outer approaches of Terran-controlled territory, then through the defensive perimeter of the Terran home system. 11 days during which Voss reviewed every piece of intelligence they had gathered, organized it into the briefing package that the Intelligence Directorate would receive, and drafted her commander's assessment of the Sovereignty's counter-submarine capability. Her assessment was 6 pages long. It was precise, clinical, and devastating. The Sovereignty's unbreakable doctrine was an impressive achievement. Its gravimetric detection suite represented a genuine technological leap. Its sensor specifications, as stated by Navark Keth and confirmed by the Ashfall's own passive analysis, were accurate. The detection range of 0.7 light hours was real. The 92% accuracy was plausible. The capability to track a subspace contact in real time was, based on the sensor architecture the Ashfall had surveyed at 50 meters, achievable. But the assessment noted 5 critical vulnerabilities. The sensors were external arrays, not integrated, jammable, spoofable, destructible. The detection threshold relied on distinguishing artificial subspace disturbances from natural ones, and the Terran Excursion Navy could modify its submarine's subspace signatures to mimic natural fluctuations. The sweep pattern was radial and predictable, which meant a submarine that knew the timing could position itself behind natural subspace features during the sweep. The 92% accuracy left an 8% false negative rate, which meant that on average, 1 in 12 transits would go undetected even under ideal conditions. And the doctrine was 1 ship, 1 platform, carrying the Sovereignty's entire counter-submarine capability. One ship that a Terran submarine had already mapped at 50 meters and could destroy before its sensors powered up. The assessment concluded, the unbreakable doctrine represents a significant advancement in the sovereignty's ability to detect Terran submarine operations. It does not represent a solution. The detection suite can be countered through signature modification, timing exploitation, and terrain masking. The platform itself is vulnerable to preemptive strike. Recommend continued penetration operations with modified protocols. The Sovereignty has built a better lock. We have already copied the key. Voss signed the assessment, sealed the briefing package, and delivered both to the Intelligence Directorate by hand when the Ashfall docked at Terran Station, Bravo 17 days after departing Cathari space. The debriefing lasted 9 hours. The Intelligence Directorate's analysts read the assessment, reviewed the data, and asked Voss 347 questions. She answered each one with the same precision she had applied to every other aspect of the mission. When they asked how she had decided to approach the doctrine at 50 meters, she explained the logic. External versus integrated sensor arrays determined the entire counter-doctrine. The distinction was worth the risk. They asked if any member of her crew had objected to the close approach. She said Tanaka had raised a concern. She had addressed it with operational reasoning, and Tanaka had executed. They asked if she had considered aborting the mission when the Navark announced the accelerated sensor activation. She said she had considered it for 11 seconds and rejected it because the parade survey data was irreplaceable. When they asked how she had evaded the doctrine's gravimetric sweep, she described the Fortress Shadow maneuver in the same tone she might use to describe a standard docking procedure. She explained the reactor cycle timing, the repositioning to 312 meters, the mathematics of noise-to-signal ratio during the settling phase. The analysts took notes. One of them, a former submarine officer who had served aboard the 10 Glacial Reach before transferring to intelligence, asked a question that made the room go quiet. "Commander, you moved your submarine closer to the fortress during the reactor cycle, closer to the thing that could have killed you if it detected you. To improve your odds by what margin?" Voss considered. "Approximately 4%. You risked your boat for 4%. I did not risk my boat. I moved my boat 300 meters to improve our concealment by 4% during a 17-second window. The risk was moving. The risk of not moving was relying on a margin I had already calculated as insufficient. 4% made the margin sufficient." The former submarine officer nodded. He understood what the rest of the room did not. That submarine warfare was a discipline of margins, and the captains who survived were the ones who understood that 4% was not a small number. It was the difference between existing and not existing. When they asked what she would have done if the sweep had detected the Ashfall, she said she would have fired 24 torpedoes at the doctrine's 40 gravimetric arrays, and then extracted at maximum speed through the debris cloud. When they asked if she had been afraid, she said that fear was not a useful operational parameter, and she did not allocate resources to non-useful parameters. The Intelligence Directorate classified the Ashfall's mission report at the highest level. The data on the Sovereignty's fleet, its reserve readiness, and its counter-submarine capability was distributed to Terran Strategic Command. The targeting package for the doctrine's sensor arrays was transmitted to every submarine in the Terran fleet. 3 months later, the Sovereignty of Cathari deployed the unbreakable doctrine on its first operational patrol. The dreadnought swept the border approaches with its gravimetric detection suite, running at full power for 72 consecutive hours. It detected no anomalous contacts. It reported the border secure. During those 72 hours, 2 Terran deep-strike submarines transited through the Sovereignty's border interdiction grid, conducted surveillance operations inside Cathari space, and withdrew without detection. They used modified subspace signatures based on the Ashfall's intelligence. They timed their transits to coincide with natural subspace fluctuations mapped from the Ashfall's data. One of them passed within 300 meters of the doctrine itself, using the dreadnought's own engine wash as a masking layer. The Sovereignty never knew. Supreme Navarch Torvan Keth received the doctrine's patrol report and told his advisory council that the border was secure and the human submarine threat had been neutralized. His advisory council congratulated him. His intelligence services published an assessment confirming that the doctrine's detection capability had closed the gap. The Sovereignty's military journals ran articles praising the sensor suite. Defense Appropriations Committees approved funding for 3 additional Doctrine-class dreadnoughts, each carrying the same gravimetric detection arrays. All 3 were built, all 3 were deployed. All 3 swept the border with their advanced sensors and reported the same finding: no anomalous contacts detected. The border was secure. The Sovereignty's counter-submarine program was a success. The Terran Excursion Navy read these reports through intercepts provided by submarines operating inside Cathari space. The submarines read the reports, recorded them, and continued their missions. In 6 years of the Doctrine-class program, the Sovereignty of Cathari built 4 dedicated submarine hunting dreadnoughts, spent approximately 11% of its defense budget on counter-submarine capability, and conducted over 300 gravimetric sweeps of its border space. Not once did the Doctrine-class sensors detect a Terran submarine. Not once did the Sovereignty's intelligence services identify a confirmed human incursion. The program was, by every metric the Sovereignty chose to measure, a complete success. During those same 6 years, the Terran Excursion Navy conducted 209 submarine missions inside Cathari space. Everyone returned safely. Everyone brought intelligence. The Terran Navy knew the Sovereignty's order of battle better than the Sovereignty's own admirals. It knew which ships were combat-ready and which were in maintenance. It knew the personal communications of every flag officer in the Cathari fleet. It knew the patrol routes, the sensor gaps, the timing of every gravimetric sweep down to the second. It knew because Commander Alara Voss had spent 50 meters below the unbreakable doctrine's keel, counting the teeth of the weapon built to find her, and had found them wanting. The Sovereignty of Cathari paraded 12,000 warships and declared its borders impregnable. Below them, a submarine 211 meters long carried the proof that the word impregnable had a different meaning than the Sovereignty believed. Voss never spoke about the mission publicly. She received no medals that could be displayed. Her name appeared in no dispatches. The Ashfall's service record was classified at a level that ensured it would remain sealed for a century. She was promoted to captain, then to commodore, then to rear admiral. She commanded the Terran Excursion Navy's entire submarine force for 11 years. During her tenure, not one submarine was lost, not one was detected, not one mission failed. When she retired, the Intelligence Directorate presented her with a single framed document. It was a printout of a Cathari intelligence assessment, intercepted by one of her submarines, dated 3 years after the Ashfall's mission to Cathari Prime. The assessment read, in full, "Analysis of the human submarine threat has been completed. Conclusion: the threat is theoretical. No confirmed detection of a human submarine has ever been recorded by any Sovereignty sensor platform. While the existence of human submarine capability cannot be entirely ruled out, the absence of any detection event across 6 years of dedicated counter-submarine operations suggests that the capability, if it exists, is limited to a small number of vessels with marginal penetration ability. The Sovereignty's border defenses remain adequate. Recommend reduction of counter-submarine funding by 30% and reallocation to conventional fleet expansion." Below the printout, in a hand she did not recognize, someone had written a single line: "They built 4 dreadnoughts to find you. They concluded you don't exist." Voss hung the framed document in her study. She looked at it every morning for the rest of her life. She never smiled when she read it, because Commander Ilara Voss was not a person who smiled at her work. But there was a coldness in her eyes that might have been pride.